Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics, reaching you live from Lagos, the nation's commercial nerve center. I'm Jeffrey Uzoma. Let's bring you up to speed with the big happenings in politics and in the polity. Justice Lifo of the Federal High Court, Abuja, affirms Nanadi Usman-led caretaker committee as the valid leadership of the Labour Party. And the Nigerian police makes U-turn, finally admits that mass abduction took place in Kaduna local government area of Kaduna State. Conflicting figures of persons abducted sits around 177. There's a lot playing out in the politics, so let's get started with what is happening in court. Justice Peter Lifo of the Federal High Court Abuja has recognized the Nanadi-led ESCO of the Labour Party, sacking Mr. Julius Abure as the national chairman of the party. Delivering judgment, Justice Lifo relied on April the 4th, 2025 verdict of the Supreme Court to declare Senator Nanadi Usman as the valid leader of the party. The court also ordered the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to forthwith recognize Nanadi Usman-led caretaker committee as the only valid authority to represent the Labour Party pending when the party convenes a national convention. The judgment followed a suit instituted by Nanadi Usman before the court. Aside from Abure, the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, was also cited as a defendant in the matter. Justice Lifo held that the evidence before him established that Abure's tenure as national chairman of the party had elapsed. While dismissing Abure's contention that the matter was an internal affair of the political party that is non-justiciable, the court held that the setting up of the LP Caretaker Committee was a necessity that arose from the order of the Supreme Court. Interesting days ahead. Apparently, let's also tell you that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has unveiled the final list of candidates for the June 20th governorship election in Ekiti State, leaving out the People's Democratic Party and the Social Democratic Party. Speaking at a press conference in Ekiti, the state capital, the resident electoral commissioner said the political parties are now free to start their own campaign in the state.
The commission recognizes the rights of political parties and candidates to campaign freely. However, the right must be exercised responsibly and in full compliance with the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as amended the Electoral Act 2022 and Code of Conduct for Political Parties and Campaigns. The political parties are hereby reminded to, number one, notify security agencies and relevant authorities ahead of all rallies, procession, and campaign activities. Avoid hate speech, inciting statements, misinformation, and personal attacks. Any violation of campaign rules, breach of public peace, will attract appropriate sanction in line with the law. And we really need peace. We want peace. And we want the election and the rallies and the campaign to be very peaceful as possible. Because it is only peaceful as possible that we can be able to control free and fair election.
And away from politics, the Nigerian police force has confirmed that an abduction incident actually did take place at Komen Wali community in Kajuru local government area of Kaduna State following days of uncertainty and conflicting reports. A statement issued by the force public relations officer Benjamin Nundeyin acknowledged that the incident, which sparked fear and anxiety among residents, was initially disputed during a meeting of the Kaduna State Security Council convened by the state governor. According to the force, some individuals from the affected local government area described the report as false, creating uncertainty and the need for further verification by security agencies. The police explained that comments earlier made by the Commissioner of Police in Kaduna, Rabiu Mohammed, which were widely interpreted as denial, were in fact aimed at preventing public panic while details were being confirmed. According to the statement, subsequent checks by operational unit and intelligence sources have now confirmed that the abduction did occur. In response, the Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, has ordered the deployment of critical operational and intelligence assets to Kajuru and surrounding communities. The police say tactical units have been deployed, patrols intensified, and targeted search and rescue operations are underway to locate and safely rescue the victims while restoring calm to the area. The statement, however, appealed to the public and the media to rely on official sources for verified information to avoid speculation that could jeopardize ongoing operations. All right, so that's what has played out in Kaduna State. Now, that state, to be fair to the government of that state, since the coming in of Ubasani, we've seen some level of sanity. We've not seen too much of reported cases of attacks and killings. Whatever means it used, we're not quite clear because there has been debate as to the measure that was deployed. But be that as it may, sometimes when we interview other governors within that region, we ask them, what is Kaduna doing right? So this is like setting the state back as far as the incident of abduction is concerned. But a lot of controversy ensued as to why would the police deny in the first place. Well, let me bring in my guest, Mr. Dr. Gabriel Adamo is the MD Beacon Intelligence and Security Limited. He joins us virtually. Dr. Adamo, thank you so much for coming on the program.
My pleasure, Jeffrey. Good afternoon.
So, Dr. Adamo, I want to unpack and unlayer this issue in phases. Let's begin with the argument over whether or not the incident did happen. I'm used to the army, for instance, denying things and then later admitting them. I don't know whether it's a modus operandi within the army. You may be able to educate me on that. But I'm not too familiar with that of the police. 177 people were abducted, and it took us 48 hours to be able to confirm from the police. For me, it looks like a lame excuse because there's something called a holding statement in public relations, which will neither deny nor accept. It's basically acknowledging something pending when things are done. But this was a flat denial, even though they are trying to manage it differently now with the first PRO, that the commissioner was trying to manage panic. Do you manage panic by denying what happened? Help us.
Definitely no. And I think let's start by expressing our sympathies to the victims of the family, and of course joining in hoping that the victims would be freed, released, rescued as quickly as possible. Having said that, I think the whole scenario, everything that has happened from the 18th up until date is quite unfortunate. And it is a pattern that we've seen repeatedly over time in Nigeria, starting from the Chibok girls incident up until the last one in Niger State in Papiri, and then this one happening in Kaduna. Instances of first denial, and then of course later acceptance, as it were, have been the pattern. And what it ends up being is that the trust deficit that exists between the security forces, the police, the military, and the several others continues to expand. The victims, their family members, the institutions they represent, in this instance, the Christian Association of Nigeria, would not in any way be happy with the initial positions taken by the government and, of course, the security forces. So I am hoping that this would be a learning curve. Going forward, like you rightly said, there are holding statements. Even if you have doubt, be mindful of the fact that these are human beings, they have family members. Whatever you put out there will definitely affect them. And we do know that in security, sometimes you take measures to protect the lives and safety of the victims. But these are not the kind of measures. And so again, I hope this will be a learning curve, and that going forward, we would see more measured positions by the security forces and the government. In all of this, what worries me, Jeffrey, more than anything, is the absence of accountability till date. The statement, even the most recent one by the police, does not in any way mention the steps that will be taken to enhance accountability within the policing measures. How can that number of persons be taken and no one is held responsible for them being taken, in spite of the fact that over the last few months, we've seen this issue of insecurity and, of course, the need to enhance security in our rural areas, especially in our religious places of worship and schools. It's been on the front burner of our conversations.
Dr. Adamo, I think I'm looking through the CSP's, that's Benjamin Hundeyi's statement, whether I can find figures, but I don't, maybe they are careful about figures as well. But I try to give everybody, like, opportunity to be able to explain their position. Staying on this issue of the argument of whether or not this really happened, could there be a reasonable national security position? Because there are speculations to the fact that given what has played out with the argument of genocide and the threat by Trump and what had happened in Sokoto and all of that. So this was perhaps a way to just shield, to say, look, guys, let's not escalate things. From a national security point of view, is there a valid argument in that sense?
Unfortunately, no. You know, we can beat around the bush, we can play around it. The reality remains that the threat element the threat element's capability and capacity has not been reduced in any way. The threat element remains. The threat element hibernates in forested parts. The threat element is able to come out, carry out attacks, and recede back into those forested areas. And the sad part, Jeffrey, is that these forested parts that we are discussing transits across several states. So if, for instance, Kaduna is doing very well, but for XYZ reason, Kaduna or Zamfara or Niger State are not doing well, or decide, for instance, the military decides to carry out an operation, which is the case in Niger State, there is nothing stopping the threat element from moving into Kaduna and carrying out the function. Now, if you just oppose this with the possibility that in the most immediate mass abduction, which is the one in Papiri, that perhaps ransom was paid or some form of agreement was reached with the bandits. Now, what is stopping these bandits from also carrying out another mass abduction so that they are also listened to, and then their whatever their demand is also met? So this is the danger of handling issues of national security without a strategic objective of first containment and then bringing it to an end. So frankly, again, my point is we can beat around the bush and attempt to put forward an argument to say we're suppressing the information in order to achieve a national security objective. But in the long run, it does not help us if we do not take a broad measure. Till date, as we are discussing, Jeffrey, we do not have a counter-banditry strategy in place. We do not have any coordinated approach for addressing banditry. I know the president has indicated that all bandits and the several other criminal groups are now terrorist groups. But how do we codify that? How do we relate that with the current Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act that we have in the country? Those are issues that, for me, would affect national security, and that we need to, as a country, be very clear about. Haphazard approaches, responses of such manner will not help us. As long as the threat element remains, as long as the threat element has the capacity and the capability to act, as long as there are targets, and there would always be targets, there will be religious places of worship, there will be persons moving from point A to B, there will be schools that remain vulnerable, unfortunately.
Dr. Adamo, what kind of help? I think at this point, there's a conversation around sovereignty and all of these things we brag around. True, we cannot debate. We need to protect our national sovereignty. But I think these guys have proven to us time and again that when they want to get something done, they get it done. And the series of mass, it's not just abduction. The conversation here is about the ease of mass abduction. We just got off Papiri barely months ago, or few months to weeks ago. And now we're dealing with 177 as to against 300 and something. What kind of help do we need? Because I would debate with anyone who say we don't need help.
I think we should look inwards. I like the phrase, the man in the mirror situation. We need to look inwards and tell ourselves the truth. I did, just like you indicated, I did mention that the threat element still retains its capability and capacity to act. Now, we need to ask ourselves, why are we not reducing that capability? And what allows that capability, Jeffrey? Access to weapons, access to ammunition, ability to move around, especially on motorbikes. And I've had the Minister of Defense in a very recent interview highlighting that point. But he seems to be alone in that narrative. And then, of course, the ability to generate funds. Now, we won't be surprised, and I hope it doesn't happen, but frankly, I won't be surprised. This most recent incident in Kajuru, they are probably going to make calls. They are probably going to collect their ransom. They are probably going to have the capacity and ability to spend that ransom. So this should be the man in the mirror situation. Why do we allow these things to remain in spite of the huge sums of money we give to the security sector? If the new Minister of Defense, General Musa, retired, has this position, how do we codify that into a broad counter-banditry strategy so that we start implementing it across all the security sector? But you can't have a situation where, for instance, he feels that shouldn't be done, but then you have other arms of government who, in very obvious ways, discuss with these individuals, reach an agreement with them, probably pay them ransom, and then they free. So that's really the man in the mirror situation. There is no external element, no foreigner will come and solve these issues for us. We need to agree among ourselves that this is the direction we want to take. This is how we want to end. We've spoken about the forested parts where these guys hibernate, where they stay. Till date, we don't have a coordinated strategy for addressing the issue. Yes, someone can say the forest guards that the president and of course the governors are implementing is one of the strategies, but the strategy itself does not talk about dominating the forest parts. Yes, the forest guards will be there, but then there are so many questions around the operation of that. Bottom line, we need to be very frank among ourselves to agree a strategy on banditry that would contain the threat, that would lead to an end in the access of all the things that I've mentioned, weaponry, the ability to collect funds in terms of ransom, as well as the relationship between them and mining locations across the country, informants who are supporting them, access to those motorbikes, access to even buy fuel. The new Minister of Defense seems to be aware of all of this, but again, like I said, he's alone in the conversation. I haven't had anyone within that top security echelon discussing the matter in the manner that he has put it forward. So let's hope that going forward, especially as the elections are around the corner, that these are some of the conversations that we would hear from among our politicians, including the National Assembly, on the need for a coordinated strategy to bring this to an end. Again, I don't think this is the role of any foreigner. We need to start internally within us to agree that these are our priorities, and then a foreigner can come in and support us.
Dr. Adamo, I want you to expatiate. I know you said it in passing. What I consider discordant messaging. On one hand, the new Minister of Defense, who was the CDS, it looks to me like he says fence our border. He doesn't believe in all of these conciliatory moves that sometimes is being put out there. On the other hand, we're seeing Kaduna state government saying they're working on a hostage terrorist swap in that sense, where they talk about 77 bandits or terrorists in exchange for 1,000 hostages that were released by this bandit. And then we see a situation where over 300 victims of this kidnapping in Papri were released. We don't know the circumstance under which they were released, whether ransom was paid. When all of these things I've said put together, how do you think the terrorists perceive it? Does it show that we have a clear-cut position as a country, or does it make us look weak so they can continue as business as usual?
First, I think you meant Katsina, not Kaduna. It's
Katsina, my apology. Katsina, yes, Katsina.
Yeah. In simple terms, it does not help us in the long run when we don't have a coordinated strategy. If these guys know that whenever they engage in a mass abduction, that we're going to engage with them. And I mean, there's no running away from the fact that we did engage with them. There was enough evidence to show that at least an arm of government engaged with the, call them terrorists, call them bandits, that abducted individuals in Papiri. They were engaged with, an agreement was reached. We don't know the circumstance of that agreement, but they were engaged with. The same with what happened in Kebbi State. They were engaged with. Now, as long as that continues, that means other threat elements. And remember that these bandit groups are divided into different subgroups. Now, there is also a competition among them. If one engages in a mass abduction and benefits from it, the others would also engage in it. So we are invariably, and I think inadvertently, incentivizing mass abduction by engaging with these bandits. What we need to do is to show that there is a consequence for criminality, including abduction. And I think the president has been very clear in terms of the directive that he has issued. What we haven't seen is the translation of that directive into policy instruments that would now show consequences for engaging with bandits. And if in this instance it is the highest office within the security apparatus that is doing the engagement, then the question arises is who is going to penalize that highest office? And that is where I think the National Assembly, in its oversight function, needs to come in. The critical questions need to be asked around circumstances that follow when mass abductions occur. What are the nature of the engagement? Is the engagement based on exchanges in the manner that we think as in our state government doing? Is it money that is being paid as ransom? The National Assembly needs to step in. And like I did mention earlier on, we need to look at the bigger picture. If we are going for immediate gains, and immediate gains would be releasing the persons, and then of course everybody claps and is happy 300 persons have been released, but we're not looking at the bigger picture that by doing that, we're actually incentivizing the criminals, and that means more abductions would occur. Then we will be where we are. The best, of course, strategy, Jeffrey, we shouldn't run away from that, is to prevent it from happening. The Safe School Initiative has failed. We do not have a coordinated strategy on counter-banditry in the country. We do not have a strategy for protecting soft targets around the country, soft targets, religious places of worship, and others. So all of these are things that we need to identify and move forward. But overall, the reality is that unfortunately we're incentivizing mass abduction by engaging with the abductors, and invariably, pandering to their needs in whatever it is. It could be money, it could be exchange of prisoners in the manner that we've seen it. And unfortunately, this is at the federal level, and of course at some subnational levels. Other subnationals do not agree to that, and that's the situation at the moment.
Dr. Zemo, the reason I was talking about help as a necessity is because when you see some of the areas that this elements, I'm trying to look for a very terrible name to call them, but let me leave it at terrorists. These elements carry out their acts. You can see ungoverned spaces and all of that. And I don't know whether we have the technology to be able to drive this as much as possible. I know that in the renewed hope agenda of the president, in his manifesto that I still have, 80-page document, one of the planning technology was to say we will ensure that the national broadband plan to deliver broadband services to 90% of the population is achieved by 2025 or in 2026. I doubt if this was achieved, because this could have gone a long way So how much of technology do we need? Because right now, we can't have men boots on the ground, because we say, the people are overstretched, whether it's our military or our police. But these are citizens that are entitled to protection. Their dignity of life, their life itself needs to be protected. What kind of technology do we need to help here?
In all ramifications. I mean, if we divide security into 6 broad layers, starting from detection up until the response capability, there are 6 components that I can quickly run through. In each of them, we need technology. When the police challenged residents and the Christian Association of Nigeria in Kajuru to produce the names of the victims, of course, we saw the names being produced. But it would interest you, the national identity numbers of those individuals were never produced. And it is simply because, for some odd reasons as a country, we have not deemed it necessary to target rural areas in national registration. I know the last time the agency released its statistics, it says over 100 million Nigerians have been registered under the national identity number. So when you talk of technology, having that kind of identification would definitely help. When individuals are missing, instead of the police, like we discussed earlier on, denying that, one of the first things they can do is to actually look into the identity of the individuals in that location, and then attempt to verify when statements like that are made. But because we haven't done that, we're not doing that. The bandit population, who incidentally represent a certain ethnic group, what are we doing as a country to target that population for national identification? Then let's go to surveillance as one of the layers of security in terms of our ability to detect. Now, on your station, you discussed with different government officials, including the Minister of Defense, who have indicated the weaknesses in our capacity to conduct surveillance. So technology today would definitely come in as a force multiplier in our ability to conduct surveillance. When 100+ persons are herded into the forest, how easy will it be, Jeffrey, to look at surveillance feeds and see, first off, who conducted that abduction and then where those persons were taken to? We're not talking of, even if it's ants and you gather 100+ of them, you'll be able to see from surveillance capability. For this instance, you're talking of hundreds of human beings plus their abductors. So invariably, over 200 persons moving, it will be very easy. So again, the 6 layers of security, from detection up until response, technology can be a force multiplier. And it is sad, I say this with all sense of responsibility, Jeffrey, that 20-something years into the Fourth Republic, we're still discussing technology as a force multiplier. No country will move forward in this era, 2026, without force multipliers like technology. I have made this statement before. Even communication as a means as a force multiplier and as a necessary means in any security operation. We're using GSM to communicate among our security personnel. So I think we need to be very serious. I've spoken about man in the mirror situation. We need to do that and be realistic.
All right, Doctor, my apologies. You can land on your thoughts. Just land on your thoughts in 10 seconds.
Yeah, I was just saying that we need to be serious as a country to address the national security challenge. I don't think we're serious enough. We're pandering with it. Well, in fact, to say it as it is, we're playing politics with it. We need to be serious to address it. And by accountability is really the way to go, both in terms of financial accountability and operational accountability.
Absolutely said. In fact, I wish we had more time. I wanted to talk about that correlation between insecurity and election cycle, because it looks like, according to the political class, everybody takes turn to cause instability. The APC was accused of bringing instability through Boko Haram in that sense, because that's what they used to say. They've denied that they don't have any business. So who is doing this now? We do not know. But we'll continue to have this conversation. Dr. Kabir Adamu is the MDC of Beacon Intelligence and Security Limited. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And just before we go, let's tell you that the Ogun State government has halted the ongoing selection process for the Awujale of Ijebu land, citing the need to maintain peace, public order, as well as protect the integrity of the process. According to a statement signed by the State Commissioner for Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs, Ganiyu Hamzat, and addressed to the chairman of Ijebu local government area, the decision follows several petitions and reports from security agencies and stakeholders. The state government also refers to the Obas and Chiefs Law of Ogun State 2021, which empowers it to set aside an appointment in the interest of peace and order. And that's it on the program. Thank you so much for your time and company. I'm Jeffrey Ozama. You've been served on Lunchtime Politics. Bye-bye.